I'm here with Grassroots and Cardiff Youth Service representing us and young people at the Homeless World Cup. It's an absolute privilege to be here on such wonderful, wonderful, inspirational event and seeing all these nations and all these wonderful, wonderful countries coming together in the spirit of football. Now, we've been running a load of different activities for young people over the course of the week, all based around sort of positive interaction and fun. We're doing some drumming at the moment. We've got a load of soft play. We've built a park. You name it, we're doing. We've got henna tattoos. We've got glitter face paints. We're doing loads and loads and loads. But importantly today, we were given some time. One of our young people, Sarah McCready, was given some time by the chairman of the Homeless World Cup, Hollywood superstar Michael Sheen. He gave us half an hour of his time and he allowed us to interview him, give his thoughts and opinions on homelessness, the Homeless World Cup, and the difference that we humans can make to one another.
Hi there, my name is Sarah McCready. I'm here on behalf of Grassroots and Radio Platform, and I'm here with Michael Sheen.
Hello,
Michael.
Hello.
Basically, we're here today because we're talking about the Homeless World Cup, which is here in Cardiff. So, Diolch and Val for all your work in putting this together and for speaking to us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's fantastic to be here.
Amazing.
It's been great. Have you been able to spend much time here this week?
Yes, I'm a big football fan, so I've watched as many games as I possibly can.
The
very
standard is
Portugal.
really high, isn't it?
Oh my goodness, yes.
What have been the games you've watched that you've really enjoyed?
I think watching Portugal, but even though it was against Wales, Portugal were they were fantastic.
Yeah, that wasn't a great one for Wales, that one.
No.
Well, result-wise, they played well.
They played really well.
Yeah.
Did Wales proud, I think.
They did. They've been brilliant, both the men's team and the women's team this week. We knew that the men's team was going to be very strong this year, and we weren't sure how the women's team would do this year, but the women's team have really done well. So it's been fantastic to see that.
Oh yeah, I was speaking to the Welsh women's captain yesterday, and I said, "How do you think Wales are going to do?" And she said, "Wales are going to win it." So
there you go.
Yeah.
You need confidence, and if it was ever going to happen, it's going to happen here on home turf, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so exciting.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved with this? When did you first hear about it? And
Well, I first got involved with an organisation called Street Football Wales, and so Street Football Wales is the grassroots organisation that arranges tournaments for people within Wales. They operate out the Swansea area, run by Kerry Harris, who's been doing it now for I think 16, 17 years. And he got in touch with me when I was doing Soccer Aid, which I was doing for about 8-10 years. And he came up to Manchester to meet me whilst I was there and wanted to tell me about Street Football Wales. And so at first I didn't really kind of understand how it worked. And I think a lot of people feel like this, like why are you spending money and putting time and energy into arranging football for people who are dealing with homelessness or social exclusion? Why not deal with the homelessness and the social exclusion? And so I sort of spoke to him about it, and he told me how it worked, and then I started to understand the brilliance of the idea, really, which is that the football draws people in. You can make connections with people through getting them to play football that you might not be able to make otherwise. It would be, we're talking about people who are going through really difficult experiences, complex experiences that are making them very excluded from mainstream society, very marginalised, and it's quite hard to reach those people and to get them involved in something in a way that you can then get services to and get support to. And the football seemed to be drawing people in. And then once people came along and got involved, then instead of dealing with stigma and judgment in any way, started to feel like they belonged to a group of people, that they were welcomed, and there was a real level playing field there for them. People start to get more self-esteem, self-confidence, and motivated around health and well-being and that kind of stuff, and suddenly they're part of a team. And so I could see that this was kind of transformational for people with Street Football Wales. So I got involved, I became a patron there, and I wanted to help them out. And that was when I first heard about the Homeless World Cup, that every year organisations like Street Football Wales all over the world have trials, pick a national team, and then have to raise the money to get them over to wherever the country is that's hosting the Homeless World Cup that year. And so I went with the Welsh team to Oslo, where the event was happening that year, and so that was my first experience of seeing a Homeless World Cup. And the actual football setup is very similar each time. You have certain things that you have to have the pitches and the practice pitches and the stands and stuff. So it was similar to this in Oslo, but there wasn't all the other stuff. So I watched it and I thought the tournament was brilliant, and it was to see the Welsh players, to see what it meant to them to be travelling abroad for the first time, to be representing their country in this tournament, meeting people from other cultures and other ways of life, but having shared experiences. I could see that was a really, really big, powerful, impactful experience for them. And having spent time with them ever since, I've also seen how it's changed their lives in all kinds of ways. And so then at that point I thought I'd love to be a part of making this happen and be a part of ensuring that, you know, more people have this experience. I thought, well, why can't we bring it to Wales then? Yeah. So at that point also I thought, well, I can see that the tournament itself is an extraordinary thing and a life-changing thing potentially for people, but I can also see that there's the opportunity to be more ambitious with it as well, and to potentially use it as a platform for change after the tournament as well. So rather than just thinking about what happens during that week, what can it lead to after it? The focus that you can get and the collaborations you have to deliver it. How can you continue those on to really work on issues around homelessness and social exclusion in a more effective way? And so that was when I started thinking, well, the more people we can get to come down to watch the football, the more people we can get engaged in the issues potentially. And so I thought, well, why stop with the football? Let's have a music festival. Let's have the best of Welsh bands, you know, here. Let's have a place where you can engage with debate around the ideas and hear people talking about stuff, get more informed, get involved with arguments around it and ideas. Have comedy, have podcasts, have poetry performances. I know poetry is very special to you. And then have family activities here as well, so we can get people down. And then when they're on site, they can watch the football. They can, you know, engage with the players if they want, find out a bit more, get involved with all the different organisations that are here, but just have fun. And then once they're here, keep them here. You know, have as much going on as possible to keep them here. And that's sort of what's happened. It's been amazing, and we've had a bit of sunshine, which has been great, and that really helps, obviously, to bring people down. And it's just been fantastic to see everyone having such a good time, and the players having a wonderful time, and the standard of football has been incredible. So the tournament itself has gone way beyond what we hoped for, and now we've got to pull our sleeves up and really do the work around making the most of what has happened this week in order to now move forward and really try and create change for the people who need it.
Yeah, definitely. If we think kind of about the future, so homelessness is definitely a growing issue, I would say, and certainly in Cardiff. I've lived here all my life. What do you envision the long-term legacy of this being, or what do you wish it could be?
Well, I want us to be able to get to the point where homelessness is not the issue that it is at the moment. You know, that where I've been talking to people about, is it realistic to talk about ending homelessness? Is that a realistic goal? Or should we be looking at something like, when homelessness does occur, that we make it brief, rare and non-recurring? And so that's something that I've started thinking about, because, you know, as a community, I think we can be judged by how we look after each other when we're at our most vulnerable. And I think it's a mistake to think of people who are dealing with homelessness as this kind of solid block, this other group who are over there who would just have to be dealt with charity or not or whatever. People move in and out of need and support and vulnerability, and it's not a level playing field. You know, some communities are more at risk of those dealing with those issues than others, and that's not fair. And I think as a community we need to make sure that there is the support there for people when they are going through difficult moments. And you can't get rid of difficult moments for people, you know, as much as we would like it. Unfortunately, things happen, people go through crises, and what we want to make sure of is that when people do, that the moments that they are at their most vulnerable are as brief as possible. So, you know, that means, particularly around these issues, that emergency accommodation has to be funded and supported so that it's something that people aren't afraid to go into, or would prefer to stay on the streets rather than go into that, and to support the brilliant work that people do who are working within emergency accommodation, because they are, but it needs to be supported more. We want to make sure that there's more focus on preventative issues. You know, we know that there are people who are more vulnerable to becoming homeless down the line. Young people coming out of the care system, people coming out of prison, out of the military, people with mental health issues coming out of psychiatric care, physical issues. So let's get the support to them earlier so they don't have to get to the point of crisis, you know. And then afterwards, when people are put into, you know, do get a stable accommodation, make sure that there's the support there for them so they can stay there, because not everybody is able to deal with that immediately. We've got people who are dealing with all kinds of complex issues, so they have to have the support to stay there rather than find themselves back out on the streets again. So I think a lot of people, and I include myself until recently, sort of felt like, well, the answer to homelessness is you take people off the streets and you put them into the empty buildings. Look at all these empty buildings and look at all these people on the streets. Surely that can happen. But it's a lot more complicated than that. Although, even though it is more complicated than that, there's no reason why we can't solve it. We just have to work together on it in a more effective way and have a shared strategic goal. And if we can do that, then I don't see any reason why here in Wales, we turn the fact that we're a small nation into our advantage here. We can do this, but we have to work together to do it.
Definitely. I'm here on behalf of Grassroots, which is a youth charity that I've come through myself, but they also do a lot of work with homeless youth. What's the importance of having organisations for young people specifically sometimes? Because it's an issue that affects a lot of young people as well,
yeah.
Well,
yeah, I mean, I've worked with Llamau here in Cardiff for quite some time, who work with young people and women who are dealing with homelessness. We did an initiative with young people who have gone through homelessness around a helpline that we set up, which was fantastic to be able to actually speak to the young people themselves and say, what would have helped you? What would you have really liked to have seen be in existence when you were going through this? And out of that came the helpline. Like I say, the statistics around young people coming out of the care system and becoming homeless is just shocking and just shouldn't be there. People talk about leaving the care system and people say, no, the care system left me, and that just shouldn't happen. There's things that you can do about that. That's not just random. We can get that changed. I think about when I left home when I was 18 and went off to college, drama school, and I went off to London. Looking back on it now, at the time you sort of feel like you're invulnerable or something, and I had a lot of great support and it was fantastic. I had a supportive family, but I can see how easy it would have been had I not come from a supportive family or not had the advantages that I had, that things could have gone a very different way, so I think you even though you're at your most psychologically feeling invulnerable when you're younger, if you're lucky, in reality, it's a very vulnerable time, that transition into independent living and being away from home and not having the sort of support network that maybe you've been used to. But for a lot of people, they don't have that support network at all, even to begin with. David Duke, who's the guy who runs Street Soccer Scotland, which is sort of the equivalent of Street Football Wales here, I heard him being interviewed the other day, and he was saying, people talk about giving people, like the people who are taking part in this, a second chance. And he said, well, really, most of these people never had a first chance. And so we're talking about people who haven't messed up or done something wrong or made bad choices, which I think is a lot of what people sort of think of it as. These are people who started off with their hands tied behind their back, and the fact that they're still here and still, certainly able to come and be a part of this is unbelievable. That is an achievement. That is an extraordinary achievement. The resilience of people that I've met, particularly young people, is just extraordinary. And so I think the more access to opportunities that most of us are fortunate enough to be able to take for granted, if people who have had the resilience and the survival instincts to be able to keep going in the hardest of circumstances, if those people just get the same access to opportunity that everyone else has, then I think they can do extraordinary things with it. And so that's why I was committed to trying to make this happen and to be able to keep going and keep trying to get access to opportunity for people such as the people who come from the communities that I come from, that I started off at. And I've become more and more aware as I've got older of how fortunate I've been. And it's not luck, it's because people have put a lot of work in to make sure that there's access to opportunity for people like myself. And so now I want to put as much work into that as I possibly can as well.
I think you're definitely doing a wonderful job. I was talking to so many of the players yesterday, and they've all got these amazing, inspiring stories. And that's probably one of the biggest privileges, I think, is seeing all these people from all over the world coming here. And there's something about football as well that brings people together. What is it? Why football?
Well, it's simple, isn't it? You just kick a ball around. When I grew up, when I was growing up in Port Talbot, I was obsessed with football. That's all I wanted to do. That's all I did all the time. And I loved it. And you don't have to be able to talk to anyone. You just can lose yourself in it. When you talk to the Welsh team players here, they all sort of say the same thing, which is that, when they get on the pitch, they just forget everything else. It's a real escape, and you forget all the worries and the stresses of what's going on in your life at the time. And you can just put yourself into the game. You can get your aggression out, kicking the ball, and you just lose yourself. And I think that's very true. So that's part of it. It doesn't depend on language. It does break through barriers, and it's something that it's very democratic, football. I mean, even though at the top level people are paid obscene amounts of money, it is a very, very democratic game, I think, in that you can be playing in alleyways in shanty towns in South Africa or whatever, or in the lanes in Port Talbot down in Sandfields or whatever. You can kick a ball around. There's always going to be kids that you can play with, and there's something very open and welcoming about that. There's something very hopeful about that, and I think then you've got a shared experience then with people. I've gone to places, some of the most horrendous circumstances for people to live in, like the refugee camp in Bangladesh, that the Myanmar people were chased out of, the Rohingya people were chased out of Myanmar and ended up in this camp in Bangladesh, and it was really rough there. And we had a football match, and there were two teams, and there were thousands of people around because it's huge, this refugee camp, and there was like a river of sewage alongside the pitch, and it was full on, and at times there were more people on the pitch than there were on the sides, and it was this raucous, amazing game. But it's unforgettable for me. Or in an education centre for young girls in Guatemala, which is one of the most violent places for children to grow up. I remember playing in an alleyway that was no wider than for about 3 adults to walk down, and there were about 50 young girls and me just kicking a ball up and down this alleyway and laughing and shouting, and it's just amazing. It really does break through, and people can just can lose themselves in it. And what I've realised through spending time with the Welsh team over the years is that even though people talk about it being an escape from their problems, over a long period of time, it actually becomes a way to deal with your problems. And I think that's the thing. You talk to people now, like for instance, the coach of the Welsh men's team, Wayne, he told me the other day that when things were at their worst for him, he had come out of prison, he was homeless, he was sofa surfing, he was dealing with mental health issues, addiction issues and that kind of stuff. And he just used to spend all his days in a park in Cardiff because he had nowhere else to go and nothing to do, and that was at his lowest. And now he said, I'm now in that same park, because it was this park, and I'm now the coach of the men's Welsh team. I've got a full-time job. He works for the Big Issue. He's got a full-time home. He's got a partner who he met at the Homeless World Cup last year in Mexico. His mental health issues are under control, and the addiction stuff is a thing of the past, and his life was completely turned around. And it's just amazing to hear those stories. It's just incredible. And that was all through just coming down to have a kickabout.
Yeah.
And you don't know what can happen. There's such hope in that, and so to be able to be a part of creating an opportunity for 500 potential Waynes is a privilege. It's an absolute privilege to be able to do that for me.
For sure, this is changing people's lives 100%. I think football is the most beautiful, romantic thing, and so accessible as well. And just seeing it like this is especially my hometown. I'm from Cardiff, and this is makes me really proud. So thank you so much for talking to us. One more thing. So we're in Cardiff, and we're talking about football. Are you aware of what the Ayatollah is?
Oh, well, yes.
Yes.
With the Cardiff fans, yeah.
Would you be willing to give us an Ayatollah?
Well, if you'll show me the correct way to do it. Yeah. Okay. Is this?
Yes. You're Cardiff's most popular man. Joachim Val, thank you so much. It's been a real privilege to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks.